Hey, hello everyone. Welcome. I'm so excited. If you didn't see my LinkedIn post this morning, I was typing in all caps. It means I'm excited. So excited for today. So if you're looking for the internal communication benchmarks and best practices webinar, the good news is you're in the right place. You're in the right place. All right. Hi, Chloe. Welcome to the chat. Welcome to the fun.
Hello, everyone. This is my webinar debut. Here we go. Yeah, let us know where you're joining us from, what drink is fueling your morning or your evening, wherever you're joining from.
Yes. Thank you, Michael. I was not a water bottle girl. I have a Yeti. Look at this thing. Massive. This is fueling my morning. Crisp water. Do you have anything, Olivia?
I've got a bubbler. If anyone's familiar, this is like Midwest delicacy. I'm a little caffeine sensitive, so this guy's perfect. It's like 69 milligrams. It's like a cup of coffee. It's perfect.
Nice. All right. Well, we've got a lot of folks joining in the chat. We've got folks from Omaha. Nice to see you. Folks from Charleston, South Carolina, Atlanta, Houston. Hi, Kelly in Jacksonville. Jerice is joining from Atlanta, also drinking water, minding your business. I know that's right.
White Monster is crazy work. Crazy work, Lily. I love it.
Awesome. Well, we do have a lot to cover today. So as you're joining the chat, still keep introducing yourselves. This is also a great time to drop those LinkedIns. I know folks love to stay connected after the chat. Tell us where you're joining from, what you're sipping on this morning. We love to see it, and we'll get started in just a few. Also, another crisp water from Molly. Love it. Cool. Well, let's get these slides up so that way as folks are joining, they definitely know they're in the right place. Cool. So if you all can see this, we're talking internal communications, benchmarks, and best practices. I'm so excited for this conversation. So let's go ahead and dive in. I know folks are still joining in the chat, but y'all, there's so much we want to dive into today. So as you might have heard or seen, today it is going to be myself and Olivia. If we haven't met before, my name is Devin and I'm the communications manager here at Workshop. As I said before, I'm joined by our incredible content queen, Olivia, and today is in fact her webinar debut. So please flood the chat with purple hearts. Let's celebrate her. I know she's super excited. She's got her caffeine, so she's ready to go. The cool thing is Olivia has actually spent an incredible amount of time digging into the data and making it super easy for internal communicators like me to implement these stats into existing or even new strategies. You also might see a couple of workshoppers in the comments like Kelsey, and they will have some various resources for you. And if me or Olivia are talking, they might even be able to answer some questions that you have. So as always, we like to welcome you and just say thank you for spending part of your day with us. Before we dive in, here's a few reminders. Remember that you can submit or ask your questions in the Q&A section. The cool thing is this also allows you to upvote your favorite. So if you see a question and you're like, yeah, me too, retweet, just go ahead and upvote that. And then at the end of the conversation, we will make sure we get to as many questions as we can. The next thing is we would love for you to share your experiences, hot takes, all of that in the chat. Truly the best part of our conversations are you and being able to interact with you. And then finally, feel free to be present. We're definitely going to get you the recording, the reports, the slides, everything after the webinar wraps. So don't worry about taking too many notes today. Okay. So when it comes to benchmarks, having an understanding of how your team engages with internal communications is super key to building a strategy that actually prioritizes what your employees are interested in. But one of the things I really want to hit home today is like benchmarks are not about chasing a perfect stat. They're about creating a baseline on what to measure, what's working, and where there's room to grow. So this is things like open rates, click-through rates, engagement stats. All of those are ways to see how your team interacts with your messages and where there's opportunity for improvement. And so while industry benchmarks can be so helpful for context, the most important thing to focus on is what's meaningful for you and your team's goals. And we'll touch on this a little bit later more in depth, but Honestly, setting your own benchmarks helps you measure progress and celebrate wins. If your open rate is 60% and the gold standard is 80%, for example, that does not mean you're failing. We're not here to pass out any grades. It just means there's an opportunity to fine tune your approach. Every single improvement is a step in the right direction. Okay. So if you're anything like me, I really like to know where we're going, like what's on the agenda. So here is a rundown of what we're going to discuss today. We're going to be talking about all of the data that's included in this report, certainly go through benchmarks and best practices for email, SMS, journeys, or automated emails, and then, of course, AI, how to create your own benchmarks for your organization. And then we're going to wrap it all up with a bow with the top 10 key takeaways. Now that we've got that covered, I'm actually going to pass to Olivia.
Thank you, Devin. I'm so excited to share this with you guys. We have talked about it at length. This report is meaty, and if you've had a chance to dive in, it's super interesting data. So feel free to download it if you haven't already. We won't have time to break down findings for every industry during our discussion today, so I highly recommend downloading this year's report if you haven't yet. So there's a CTA up on your screen now. Go ahead and grab your copy and follow along with us if you'd like. But this year's report was our largest data set yet. We analyzed 186 million emails sent through Workshop in 2025 by 580 unique companies. So very cool things there. Within these 580 companies, we broke down the data by company size. So as small as 0 to 500 employees and as large as 10,000 plus. We identified 13 different industries across the companies represented here. And like I said, we won't have time to break it down by industry today, but definitely dive into the report yourself so you can see all of those findings for your industry. Awesome. All right. And like we mentioned earlier, we're going to touch on a wide range of internal communications benchmarks today, but let's dive into what we found specifically for internal email. But before we dive into these benchmarks, I wanted to point out something super cool about the Workshop app. You can see and monitor your own company's analytics in real time on your dashboard. The dashboard is an awesome tool for checking things out like your open rates and your click-through rates, and of course, asking CC for a more detailed breakdown of your email performance. Awesome. All right, so let's kick it off with our headline stat every year email open rate. This year, we measured the median open rate across all sends and found that the median sits right at 73%. So if you downloaded our report from last year or attended our webinar in 2025, you may have noticed a change here. We shifted our mindset this year when pulling the statistic. Last year, we pulled the average open rate, and this year, we are identifying the median. Now, why is that? You're probably wondering. The reason's super simple, actually. It comes down to inbox dynamics. The email landscape is constantly changing, and with new factors like AI bots and filtered inboxes in the mix, averages can really just be pulled around by outliers on either end. And on top of that, open rates can swing dramatically depending on your company size and your industry. A 10,000 person enterprise has a very different inbox dynamic than a 200 person startup. And a healthcare organization sends to a very different audience than a tech company. So the median just gives you a truer middle of the pack number to benchmark against. However, I did want to point out the top quartile for open rates across Workshop customers is 83%. So it's super exciting to see our users achieving some outstanding open rates. And aside from open rate, we also found the average click rate to be 11% and the average click-through rate to be 15%. And then here on the right is a breakdown of average read time for sends in Workshop. So read is sitting at 77%, glanced at 15%, and skimmed at 8%. Awesome. All right, so here's a question that you've probably asked yourself as an internal communicator. What is the best day and time to send an email? We found in our data that if you're optimizing for better open rates, you should give 9 a.m. on Monday a try. I know Devin likes to send her all company emails at this time, but if you're looking to improve your click-through rates, consider Monday afternoons. This is a great time to send out like action items or top priorities for employees to tackle throughout the work week. We found that on average, emails sent after hours, so after 6 p.m. during traditional workdays, typically see around a 9% drop in open rate. So maybe avoid those after hours sends. Awesome. Okay. Now, if you downloaded this year's report, you'll recognize this slide for sure. However, today in our webinar, I want to reframe the way that we're looking at this stat and talking about it. So The slide as it exists today is how often should emails be sent and when? I want to reframe that today and talk a little bit more about how many emails should be landing in each employee's inbox every week. So let's reframe the way we're thinking about this. It's not necessarily how many emails each internal communicator should be sending, but how many emails one employee should receive in a given week. So with that context, we found that 4 to 6 emails per week is the engagement sweet spot. It maximizes both open rate and click-through rate. So above 11 sends a week, click-through rate drops sharply. So your emails may be landing, your employees might still be opening them, but they're no longer really clicking and taking action on those. In this chart on the left, I wanted to point out something interesting. On the last slide, we said that Mondays were the best for engagement, but I want you to take that with a grain of salt. Yes, Monday is the highest for click rates at 15.9%, but I want you guys to look in closely there. I know those numbers are small, but Tuesday and Wednesday are extremely close seconds at 15.6%. So it's very, very, very important to test different send days and send times as well. And for this chart on the right, I want you all to notice how the overall engagement spikes after 3 p.m. in your sender's time zone. So digging in further, we can assume that between the hours of 3 and 5 p.m. when engagement is high, employees may be, wrapping up their workday, cleaning out their inboxes before hopping offline for the evening. So this might be a good time to try some comms that require an employee to take some action. So if you aren't seeing great click and click-through rates in your own benchmarks today, maybe try the end of the day. All right, let's discuss. Hop in the chat here. Let us know, have you done any experimenting with different send times? Devin, we know that you love your 9 a.m. Monday sends, but are there any other send times that have really worked well for you here at Workshop?
Yeah, I was actually just saying this in the chat. I send pretty much every day of the week. Mondays, I try to get strategic about what I'm sending out, but I also do love Tuesdays. For us at Workshop, Tuesdays is our weekly all hands. So I'm doing like all company emails, either top of the morning or mid afternoon to sort of wrap the day. So this really tracks with the benchmarks that we're seeing here, which is very affirming.
I'm seeing 9 a.m. on Tuesdays in the chat. I love that for your weekly newsletter.
Mhm. I've also seen some people asking about multiple time zones. One of the cool things about the Workshop app in particular is you can send based on time zone. Full transparency, I don't do it a ton unless it's like an early AM send. Like if I'm sending like top of the morning, I don't want someone who's, Eastern time or West Coast time to be getting something before their workday starts. But I do know that it is really helpful to look at those benchmarks when you're thinking about more distributed teams. So something to take into goodness gracious consideration when you're thinking about how you're measuring that for your sends.
Awesome. I'm loving all this in the chat. Lots of different things. And I think it's a good reminder too. It's so important to do what's best for you. If you guys are seeing awesome engagement with a certain time and a certain day, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it's working for you and working for your organization, keep on keeping on. I love that.
Yeah. I even saw someone say you can almost like train your employees. It sounds a little funny to say it that way. But like I said, for us, Tuesdays, that's an all company, all hands on deck sort of day. So folks are looking to their inboxes for certain things. So I would say if you have something similar at your company, whether it's on a Tuesday or a Thursday or even a Monday, think about those days when employees are highly engaged already and anticipating news or updates from you or any leadership people.
Awesome. I love it. Perfect. Okay, let's dive into segmenting your comms. I'm going to pass it to you, Devin.
Whoops. There we go. I was skipping ahead. Cool. Well, I know we were talking a little bit about how to be strategic with those send times, but as we continue to dive into the data, I do want to remind you that one of the most powerful things that you can do is segment your data. So this goes back to the comment that I was saying earlier, right? Like look at those sends based on time zones, based on departments. Those company-wide averages do serve a purpose, and I think you can certainly look into them. But I also think there's a deeper and more meaningful story when you consider things like, are certain departments consistently less engaged with a specific type of email? Do employees in different locations or time zones, as we talked about, open those emails at different rates? And if you even have the ability to see, like, are they opening it around a certain time? That can also be a trigger for what you can do to change your strategy. Another thing is your CEO actually reading those weekly all hands recaps. I do check to make sure Rick reads those emails. He's the CEO here at Workshop. And has one specific team's engagement improve significantly after a change in your comms approach? Maybe instead of sending at 9 a.m., you tried sending like right after a meeting or in the afternoon. Really, once you have an understanding of those questions, generally the next steps become pretty obvious, or at least give you a jumping off point to start strategizing and thinking with your team. So, just wanted to jump in there quick, but I'm gonna actually pass it back to Olivia.
Awesome. Thank you, Devin. Okay, let's dive into subject lines, these attention grabbers. All right. If you're wondering how long your subject line should be, ideally it should land between 21 and 40 characters. When those subject lines start to be more than 81 characters, that's when we really start to see those open rates drop. And try throwing an emoji in there every once in a while. In our data, we saw that emojis can help boost your open rates by almost half a percentage point, and they can make your email stand out in a crowded inbox. And let me tell y'all one thing about Devin is she loves a witty subject line. If you're a workshopper, you know those all hands meetings. I definitely click on them. Those subject lines are hilarious. They're usually a funny tidbit from the meeting or, some piece of lore from workshop. So love to see that from Devin. She loves a witty subject line. She's the best.
Yeah, I absolutely do. And one of the ways that we actually get those subject lines here at Workshop is during all hands. I actually listen to the things that people say, whether in person or on the chat. And sometimes there's just things that are really funny that you have the context when you were at the meeting. So it's just like fun to use as a subject line. I think yesterday's subject line was like, once you know a millennial says a phrase, it's ruined. It has nothing to do with the email, guys. It's just fun. But if that's not something that works for your organization, you can always use tools like AI or CC. If you've not met CC, this is Workshop's AI agent to support with those subject lines. Here are also another couple of tips that I like to keep in my back pocket and consider. Think about how you can highlight your employees. So you can celebrate and recognize team members. It's just a way to keep everyone sort of connected and having fun. The next thing is keeping everyone in the loop, right? Just be very direct and transparent. Say what it actually is in the email. And that sort of goes into the next one of like making it very clear when action is needed. If your employees need to do something, this is your opportunity to say it, whether it's like action required or take the survey or giving a deadline. Very similar to that is keeping things timely. If there is a time frame, right? We just finished our employee engagement survey and that ran from June 2nd to June 22nd. And so we wanted to put like a very time bound thing, not only in the body of the email, but also in the subject line. So people, as they're scrolling in their inboxes, can see that they have a window of time to take action. The next thing is driving excitement for events. You can get your employees interested in what's coming up with different subject lines to keep them engaged. And then lastly, focusing on what your employees care about, right? If it's about pay or benefits or sabbaticals, perks, just go ahead and say that. It's definitely going to help with those open rates and get you some clicks in that email. Let's see here. Speaking of open rates, I've got a lot of screens here, y'all. I don't know if anybody else works with 2+ screens. So speaking of those open rates, there are a couple of things that you can do today to start improving those rates. The first thing is sending from a person and not a department. This is something that we've mentioned time and time again. Just about all of the emails that I send out, so whether that's like our internal podcast, our founder chat podcast, all hands, those emails are generally coming from like me, Devin at useworkshop.com, versus like talk shop podcast or whatever the case may be. It's just not specific enough and it feels a little bit more personal. The next thing is you can actually tailor your list to who actually needs to hear your message. So again, this goes back to that segmenting your audience just a teeny bit and thinking about how you can tailor the content for each message that you're sending. That is going to have a huge impact on those open rates. The next thing, again, we talked about those send times earlier. Think about when you are sending things out. I like to do a little bit of time zone sending, what we talked about that's available in the workshop app whenever possible. But otherwise, I'm just really aware of when the email is hitting inboxes. I'm not going to send an email at 5 o'clock, just as I'm not going to send an email at 7:15. That's just not the working hours that work for our company. But you all know your company's best, and you can probably already start to decipher when it would make sense to send an email out. The next thing is preview text. I actually think this is one of the most slept on, underrated things. I love having fun, just as much fun as the subject line with the preview text. And so this is another opportunity to have fun. It's a great place to put like some extra education, entertainment, or just details about what is actually in the email. And so I know when we talk about emails, we're already sort of thinking about like, well, what about the AI summaries and like how long are people actually going to spend in here? And truly, when it comes to that ideal length of an email, the only way to find out is to test. I sometimes will do longer all hands emails, sometimes I'll do shorter. I have really found great success with including a TLDR at the top that alludes to everything else in the email. This is actually a tip that I got from one of our webinars months ago. Somebody else said, I do TLDR, shout out to you because I've been doing that for almost a year now. But when it comes to the testing, the only real conclusion that we were actually able to draw in our data is between 200 and 500 words is about the optimal length for a solid open rate, which is like that 72%. And so for most organizations, you will find that a beautiful internal newsletter template includes things like photos, branded elements. So that's the colors and graphics. You can also pop in a GIF. So there's a little bit of movement. Linking out to videos is really cool. And even surveys is another way to keep engaging your team. Then for organizations with a lot of frontline or deskless employees, I do remember seeing someone say that in the chat. This is where I would go simple, text-based, mobile-friendly design. You can also still include like the beautiful whimsiness that you would do for like an internal newsletter, but like really get straight to the point. This is where those TLDRs and those 5 things to know are going to work really, really well. And I like to say this again, this is not here to be like, you're doing bad. You're not, I promise. And we're going through a lot of information here, but I want to remind you 100% open rate is never the goal, even for me, right? Like, I think we're sitting around like an 80, 83%, which is like optimal. It's really nice, but I know I'm not going to reach 100% of employees through one channel alone. Email is my favorite channel. It's an incredible foundation, but it's really best to take a multi channel approach to meet your employees where they are and to reiterate important information to them. Now I'm passing it back to Olivia.
Awesome. Thank you, Devin. All right, let's dive into some more email benchmarks and best practices. I want to touch on cross-posting. So cross-posting lets you reach employees wherever they are, like Devin said. The cross-post feature right inside of Workshop makes it super easy to share your email to Teams, to Slack, to SharePoint, all with a single click. It's such an awesome feature for getting more eyes on your comms. And like Devin said, she utilizes this feature quite a bit for us here at Workshop. And we found that only 27% of companies cross-posted their email to another channel last year, which is super interesting. And that most popular other channel was SharePoint. This taps into that conversation about meeting their employees where they're at. And Devin will cross-post some things like engagement surveys, invites that require RSVPs, all hands recaps right into Slack. So as an employee myself, it's very nice to see those action-oriented messages right in our instant messaging tool, so I never miss them. If you are using SharePoint, our integration can streamline your comms by archiving important updates in an easy-to-reference location, allowing you to track engagement right in your dashboard, and you don't have to copy and paste your message in 2 places. You just set it to automatically cross-post, and voila, more eyes on your comms. We love to see it. Awesome. Okay, and then let's chat personalization. This is really the name of the game, you guys. In our data, we're seeing that personalization in subject lines like first name, for example, delivers a consistent 3 percentage point open rate lift. Yet, only 11% of emails sent here in the US used it in 2025. So if you're joining us from the UK, around 32% of sends included personalization. So even adding just a first name in your subject line or in your email copy, it's a low effort, high impact tactic, right? It makes your comms feel more tailored to your audience. I know for me, seeing my first name in a subject line of an email definitely stands out in my inbox and drives me to open it. And wouldn't you want, as an employee, to receive, comms that feel more tailored to you, whether that's personalization by, your department or your name or your hire date, all things like that. So I want to dive into some best practices here. Personalization and merge tags can dramatically lift engagement, but you have to use them thoughtfully, right? They can backfire when they're overused or if they're mishandled. So some quick tips to get the most out of them. Get the basics right first. So this is something that I see in external marketing emails a lot. I'm on the marketing team here at Workshop, so I see a lot of marketing content that's external, but internal, I think it's just as important to get those basics down. But if your contact records have blank fields maybe, or inconsistent capitalization or junk values, the personalization that you use in your comms will probably expose that, right? So it's super important to audit your most used fields regularly and always set those fallback values. So every token should have a default for when that field is empty. So here on the screen, you can see starting a message with hi and then the merge tag first name versus just first name, comma. So then that default tag, if it's there, for example, shows up as hi there instead of just there at the start of your email. I know I've received a few of those in my inbox for external marketing plays from other companies. So it's always funny to see those point out. But that's one little tidbit there. And then another big tip is to use merge tags to personalize the meaning, not just the greeting. So I talked a little bit earlier about using tokens, just not in the salutation, but in the body copy and the CTA of your message as well. So dynamically adjusting your content or your call to action based on what you know about someone. It's far more impactful than just swapping out their name at the top of a message, although that can be impactful as well. And go beyond that first name. So first name personalization is just the start. Personalizations that actually make a difference tend to be behavioral or contextual. So you can merge tag by department, so marketing, IT, HR, all the things. Company name, geographic location. So for example, if you're sending an email out to everybody in your company, maybe you can add a merge tag in there and some dynamic content about their specific office. If an office is under construction, you can add a little tidbit to their newsletter of this is just for Austin office folks, and this is the update on construction, for example. You can also use merge tags for hire date if you're sending out some comms in regard to work anniversaries or things like that. So you can definitely go beyond the basics here. The possibilities are truly endless with personalization. Awesome. Okay, something really cool about this year's report. I want to move on to SMS. So this is a new section this year that we are very excited to dive into with you all. All right, we analyzed over 1 million SMS sends in Workshop. Big number, very exciting to see people utilizing SMS to reach their employees. And we found that the median click rate was 29% and the average opt-out rate was just 3%. So you can see in the pink chart below, click rates are high at the beginning of the workday around 8 a.m. They dip around lunchtime, around that 11 a.m. mark, and then they spike again in the afternoon between 2 and 3 p.m. And then on the right in the purple chart, across send days, we saw a very, honestly, super consistent click rate across all days of the week. But Friday was slightly higher at an average of 30.1%. So very cool things there. Numbers are looking awesome for SMS users in Workshop, and it's awesome. We love SMS. We love the usage and the use case for it. It's a great way to reach your employees, regardless of if you have, frontline workers or if you're a tech company like Workshop and just reaching employees when they're away from their desks. And a big question that we get from folks a lot is what's the ideal send time? As I mentioned on the slide prior, that mid-afternoon time around 3 p.m. was great for click rates at 32.8%. But another helpful tip is to probably avoid those early morning, like before work hour sends and lunchtime sends if possible. So always keep those SMS messages short, include a single clear CTA, and always, always, always confirm that opt-in status before you send. That one is a big one and super important. All right. When optimizing your SMS for clicks, we found that these three tips were super critical. So, number one, keep your CTA front and center. If you need your employees to take an action from your message, the link or the button should appear clearly so it doesn't get lost. Number two is use a strong action verb when asking your employees to do something. So, sign up here, give some feedback, RSVP. These perform or outperform vague phrases like click here or learn more or read more. The more specific, the better. And then the last one, timing matters a lot. So emails sent early in the week, mid morning tend to perform well, SMS sent mid afternoon, early in the week tend to perform well. But I want you to remind you all to test your audience specifically. So each industry is super different there. So even though we're seeing that Fridays at 3 p.m. are a great day for SMS, test it out for your own audience, see kind of how people feel. And I want to point out too, I want to go back a couple slides here. Something that's super interesting about this graph that I think I kind of brushed over the first time through is that the engagement or the click rate does drop during lunch hours, which we were surprised about. And I think honestly, that 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. time, I think some employees might just be kind of like unplugging from work during that time. That's their lunch hour. They want to just, they want to doom scroll. They want to be on LinkedIn. They want to do other things during that time. So it might not be, even though you would think, oh, everybody's on their phone over lunch. They maybe are, but not super engaged with work related content. So I thought that was a really interesting tidbit that we found from our data. All right. Let's chat about SMS. We're going to launch a poll here. Let's discuss, are you currently using SMS for your internal comms today? And if so, what industry are you in? We will probably see some healthcare folks pop in here, maybe some manufacturing folks. And Devin, while this poll gets answered here, I know that we don't have frontline workers here at Workshop, but you use SMS in a lot of other ways that are extremely effective, in my opinion, like during our offsite retreats when we're all away from our desks. What is your favorite part about using SMS for internal comms?
Yeah, you definitely named one of them. I love using them when the entire company is away from their office, whether that's at home or at our actual HQ, and just kind of like rallying people back together. So we'll do simple things like, hey, everyone, the company photo is happening at this location. Please make sure to get there 5 minutes early, right? We know that folks are probably not on Slack or on their emails, certainly during those times. And so being able to just ping them right on their phone. Another thing I love doing, and I actually did it this morning, is every time I release an internal podcast episode, I have it timed where I found out the person who drives furthest from like their home to the office, and I will cross post. So we send an email to announce the new episode for the podcast, but then I also send a text message because in my mind, I'm like, oh, they're grabbing their coffee, they're getting in the car. This text message pops up that says, hey, a new podcast episode is available. Boom, they click on it, and now they've got something to listen to on their commute. I just kind of I just tested it out, and I received a lot of positive feedback when I did that. So I think sometimes people think that you have to have like these mission critical announcements for SMS, but it also can be like a culture driver. Another thing I will add here too is with the workshop platform, you're actually able to have different phone numbers for different things. So I have a phone number just for internal communications. And then there's also another phone number that in an unfortunate event where it's like an emergency, if employees receive a message SMS from that number, they then know like, okay, this is serious. Let me lock in. So I love SMS. It's a very fun channel to use.
Yes, I love it too as an employee. And I fear I might be your target market for furthest away from the office because I did get the text this morning right as I was hopping in the car. And you know what? I did listen on my way into work. So it worked.
Yep. I've sent it about 45 minutes before. So I think that's the furthest commute that we've got, pending some of that Omaha traffic. If you know, you know. All right. Well, it's very cool to see what you all are saying. Definitely asking a lot of questions about SMS, which we will get to. People even said in the chat here that they share like their weekly newsletter with frontline workers via the SMS platform. Chef's kiss. Perfect. Like that is so great when you're able to include a link and make sure that those frontline employees are still in the know of things that are happening for people who are out of office and maybe sitting at their computer. Well, let's pop over to talk about pages. Now, if you're a workshop customer, you've probably heard all about pages, but if you're not, let me introduce you to what I like to call or refer like intranet light. Okay. And so pages are basically workshops landing page where you can send employees. I like to refer to them like as diet intranets, intranet lights kind of thing. And the way that we actually see workshop customers using this is like that longer form content that just doesn't quite fit into an email. I know I saw a question earlier that said, like, how long should this be? When should we be linking out? This is really like our solution to that. And so this is information that's really important, but like if you were to put all of this in an email, oh my gosh, you're scrolling forever. So some common cases for pages are company-wide events and town halls. So think of like your page or your like intranet light as like a central hub with like agendas and speaker bios, FAQs, post-event recaps, things that like yeah, you could put it in an email, but like holy moly, it would be so long and you would probably lose people halfway through. This allows you to get like the main points in that email and then link out to this page. Another thing that's great is thinking about it as a benefit and HR resources hub. So, like open enrollment guides, PTO policy, wellness program details. Maybe these are things that are seasonal. They don't necessarily need to exist in your intranet year round. And people don't have to go through all of the steps and digging through their inboxes to get it. The next thing is training and onboarding guides. You can give your new hires a very branded, mobile friendly home for everything they need in their first few weeks on the job. The mobile friendly here is something I really like to point out because it's like sometimes you don't even get your work computer and get it all set up until like day 2 or 3, if that. So it's nice to be able to have something that you can at least sort of follow along with your onboarding journey. And the last one is long form memos or updates. If you have a leadership team, a CEO who is what we like to call a yapper, they're not very brief in their updates. These are great places to put that. You can also put quarterly recaps or updates, any sort of strategy messaging that just deserves a little bit more breathing room than the inbox. Now, Pages, just like any other channel, has some best practices. Now, if you are a workshop customer, this is where I would really lock in and try to get some information. But if you're not, I still think there's some things you can take away from this if you're using like an intranet or something. So when you're optimizing for better open rates when it comes to your pages, actually 9 a.m. on a Wednesday is a pretty good time to try. Now, if you're looking to improve those click rates, you want to consider Monday. This is a great time to send out those action items or top priorities for employees to tackle throughout the week. Also, even think about how you can use those pages as like a checklist. That'd be really cool. Ultimately, what we found is that on average, emails sent after hours, so again, 5 p.m. during traditional workdays, are going to see a 17% drop in the open rate, which isn't a huge surprise. Okay, we're also going to talk a little bit about journeys benchmarks. And again, this one is for those who are using Workshop. But if you're not, basically journeys just means automated emails. So if you're doing any sort of automation with your emails, we can think about these tips to help there. So some of my favorite use cases for journeys currently are those weekly reminders, new hire onboarding, open enrollment, company events, work anniversaries, birthdays. Now, these are all different use cases that I would completely approach setting up the automated email or journey for. But basically, these are just the messages that I need to send more than once, but I don't want to manually do it, right? I remember actually sending out, going through like a calendar and being like, okay, whose work anniversary is it today? Like, did I? Now, with our HRS system and being able to use automated emails, I create sort of a template of what I want it to say and all the other information segments in, as Olivia was talking about earlier. So it's a really cool way to buy some time back and be more strategic with our comms overall. And so journeys automate the message that you always mean to send. So all of those welcome emails or reminders, the moments worth celebrating, and make sure that they get out at the right time. And so what we're actually seeing when it comes to the benchmarks for it is the median open rate for automated emails is 83%. That's awesome. And the average completion rate of an automated journey, and just what that means is if you have a series of 8 automated emails, that means an employee goes through every single one, 96%. That's awesome. Now, I know I said 8. The average actual number of emails in a journey is 3, which is very manageable and not going to overwhelm people in their inboxes. So, those are just a few benchmarks to keep in mind as you're thinking about journeys and just automating the messages that you want to get out to your employees. Now, as we start to kind of wrap up our conversation, I would just be so remiss to not talk about AI and internal communications. If you are ready to talk about this, I need the chat. I don't know what emoji to put in there, a little robot, something. But this is the one that I just feel like we are at such an interesting point in time as internal communicators. So, back in December, we released the 2026 Internal Communications Trends Report. We've got a lot of good reports, but these are two different reports. And AI quickly jumped up to being the second trend that internal communicators were most interested in. And that was just 6 months ago. We all know that AI evolves so fast, and we can imagine that the interest in that number is just going to get higher, right? And so, if we look at the number of usage with AI within the workshop platform, it was 75% in 2025. And this year, we've even launched CC, which is our AI internal communications assistant. And so, that is again, I want to reiterate 75% of workshop customers used AI features in 2025. And that's huge, right? I'm sure if we would have looked back at years prior, it certainly would have been way, way less. And actually, since its launch in early 2026, over half of our customers are using CC, our AI assistant. If you've not met CC, I know there's a link in the chat or the link somewhere. Please go try it out. And they're using CC to regularly create emails with a single prompt, and then they can also send, manage, and measure their internal comms. I very lovingly call Cece my bestie. Like I chat with Cece and I'm able to like really figure out like, hey, why is this email not performing well? Should I change the subject line? It's truly like a back and forth conversation that's all specific to my data and the emails that I'm sending out to the company. So, of course, I want to chat with you all. How in the world are you using AI? Are you using CC? Are you using Claude? Are you using any other sort of tools to really just maximize the impact that you all have with your comms workflows? So I'll look to the chat, see what we're doing. But Olivia, how are you using AI in your workflow?
Yeah. So like I said, I work in marketing here at Workshop. Personally, CC and Claude, my two C's, my besties. Those are my two main resources that I use day to day for my work. So anything from helping me, hash out some ideas, helping me navigate the Workshop app if I need to go in and figure out how I'm going to market some sort of part of the product or some sort of feature, a new feature that we're launching maybe. So those are definitely my biggest tools that I use day to day.
Yeah. I see someone in the chat that said Copilot is my boyfriend. As often as I chat with these dang chatbots, it feels like we're in a relationship of sorts. Of sorts. I don't know if my husband would love me saying the boyfriend, but so we've got a good relationship going. We see a lot of people who are using Copilot, Gemini. Some people even called out like those custom GPTs and projects within Claude. Those are game changers because then you don't have to like go back and re-explain those directions all over again. CC is great for that because it comes loaded with all of the context from my com. So I don't have to be like, hey CC, we have an open rate of this, and can you please it just knows, which is great. And so anytime you can kind of skip some steps and really get to the crux of what you're trying to do is such a huge thing. And I also love seeing the nickname that people have for their chatbots. It looks like Helen has nicknamed Copilot Coco, very cute. Jamie, our CMO here at Workshop, she calls them her bot babies. So all very cute. I'm sure the big tech guys, when they came up with this, just knew that people were going to do this. All right. Well, I know I've talked a little bit about CC, but truly CC is the AI assistant built into Workshop that helps you plan, create, analyze, and just overall improve your internal communications. And honestly, guys, look how cute. look at that little delightful sun. Wouldn't you want to chat with that? And so CC has all of the context of your campaign, audiences, engagement data already built in. I talked about that a little bit earlier, but it is such a time save to not have to explain myself over and over because CC just knows what's going on and really understands my comms almost as well as I do. And I truly look at CC as a partner. I'm a solo internal communicator, and sometimes I just need that I need to talk through it. I need support to move faster, communicate clearer. And really what CC can help me do is draft an email from a brief or even a set of bullet points. I can rewrite existing content in a different tone. Maybe, I initially had a plan for how this email was going to sound, but then the all hands meeting sort of took a different tone. And now I need to change it up. I can also generate those cross post summaries for Slack or Teams. We talked about that earlier. Suggest send timing, right? So if you're I wonder if I should send at 9 a.m. or should I send in the afternoon? Ask CC. You can also translate content for different audiences and, of course, analyze performance insights across all of your sends, which is so great. You can even get as specific as certain campaigns and compare them. So if I wanted to compare one podcast to another internally, you can just really do it all. It's very, very cool. All right. So I won't spend a ton of time here, but here are just some prompt ideas for CC. We've sort of talked about this a little bit already, but really, this is a great way to kind of get your brain going on what can I actually do with CC? Because it can be a lot when I'm telling you how cool and amazing this is, but you're like, well, where do I start? And so if you're not a customer, one of the things that you can do with that link is you can actually ask it to write a subject line for benefits enrollment reminder targeting employees in California. But then if you are a workshop customer, it already has a lot of that context. And so you can just say who opened my email on Tuesday but didn't click it, right? So a couple of different prompts, but will really get you some great results. All right. Now, to reiterate, those industry benchmarks that we just went through are great to give you more context, but benchmarks are not, again, guys, please, please don't leave this webinar thinking you have to chase perfect numbers. They're really just about creating a baseline to measure what's working and where there's room to grow. So here's just a few ways that you can create your own benchmarks and best practices. Yes, you can do that. It's really tempting to chase the industry, the best, the 90%, the 83%. But the ones that matter most are actually the ones that reflect your own team's progress. So if you're sitting at a 60%, maybe figure out how do we get to that 65 and how do we get to 70 and so forth. Make those goals actually make sense and not going to stress you out in the process. Open rates, clicks, engagement metrics, those are all signals. They're just going to help you understand what your employees are actually paying attention to, what they're skipping, and maybe even where your message could be more clear or helpful. I know I am a wordy girl. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I need to make this way shorter. So thinking about that meaningful progress is going to be a huge unlock for you. And looking at things like quarter over quarter and seeing how things are moving in the right direction. Really, internal communications works best when you measure improvement over time versus trying to sprint to the finish. And ultimately, the right tools are going to make that process so much easier. Platforms designed for internal communications, like Workshop, of course, are going to bring analytics directly into your workflow, right? Olivia talked about this when we first started this conversation. When you can see who's reading your emails, which links get clicked, you can see all of that as soon as you go to your dashboard. That's huge, and it really sets off your workflow with such a informed start. So really the goal here isn't just better metrics, it's clear, more effective comms that help you and your team stay informed and connected. And so you can actually do this manually if you are not a workshop customer quite yet. You can actually pull your data into a spreadsheet, or you can ask CC if you are. And it generally takes about 3 to 5 sends before you can start drawing some conclusions, right? Don't send one email and be like, man, this didn't land well. Try sending a couple of more. I know it can feel like nails on a chalkboard of I know something isn't quite working, but give yourself a little bit more of a runway to understand what that actually is. And then here are some more questions to just consider. Analyzing data isn't always the easiest thing, and sometimes just staring at a spreadsheet or a chart can be super overwhelming. So, this is a short list of questions. I won't go through them all so I can actually get to your questions live here today, but I just want to call these out. We will send all of this information to you. And then, of course, do not discount the power of qualitative feedback. One of my love languages is words of affirmation. So, this fills up my cup personally. And if your employees consistently tell you that they love a particular part of your newsletter or your all hands recap, or even the way that, like Olivia just said, like, I really enjoy getting those podcast episodes when I'm leaving my house, like, that is a measure of success. Including even a quick pulse survey to gather feedback at the end of a newsletter is also a great way to quantify this, maybe if you don't have those one to one opportunities with your team. I know we've talked about a smile file before, and this is just a running collection of positive feedback, notable replies, moments where your comms made a difference, big or small. And these are invaluable with sharing with your leadership and staying motivated on those tough days. And if your employees are regularly requesting a specific type of email, or if a topic keeps coming up in surveys and town halls, that is a signal, right? Let that qualitative feedback inform your content strategy too, not just your metrics. If I notice that people are asking certain types of questions over and over, that's a note for me to say, maybe we need to cover this at all hands. Okay. And if you're in need of internal comms tool, of course, we're here to help. Workshop is built with internal communications in mind. With Workshop, you can measure clicks, open rates, you can meet employees where you are, you can personalize and segment your comms by department, roles, and more. And if you need to edit a link after you've sent that newsletter, I know I had to knock on wood. I was like, I've never had to edit a link. And it got me. I had to edit a link one time. But being able to do that after you send out the email is such a lifesaver. And so Workshop, it helps you clearly know your next steps and improve your strategy over time. There's a lovely button on the screen if you would love to chat more with us. All right. Well, we have covered a lot today, and I feel like I've been talking for like 10 minutes straight. So we're going to jump into some questions. I'm actually going to leave this slide up for just a teeny bit, but again, you're going to get all of this information. This is the thing to screenshot, take a picture of, because this really summarizes everything that we just talked about. But Olivia, are you ready for the questions?
Here we go. Let's dive in. I've been going through the chat. I've been going through some of the Q&A already. I'm loving all of everybody's questions. So if you have any pressing questions, please drop them in the Q&A section and we will see what we can get to. But I wanted to touch quickly. Helen in the chat said, I need CC in my life. Girl, trust, you do need CC in your life. How do I get her in Workshop? CC is available to all customers in Workshop. So if you just scroll, go to your dashboard, go to that bottom right corner on your screen, you'll see the little CC icon and you can start chatting. And then if you are not a Workshop customer, we actually have CC available for you to chat with as well. She won't have context into your internal comms metrics specifically, but you can chat with her, bounce some ideas off of her, see how it goes. But feel free to chat with CC and just see how it goes. But Helen, I will connect with you after this webinar today and kind of walk you through that if you need some additional help on where to find CC, because CC is the best. And yes, you do need CC in your life. I want to jump into another question too in the Q&A section about the data specifically. So there's a question here about how the data takes into consideration office/desk workers versus shift workers, frontline workers, etc. I want to answer that by saying the benchmarks that we measure are company level aggregation. So like total emails sent, open and click rates. We don't have visibility into recipient characteristics due to like privacy things with recipients of emails. So the report shows like when emails were sent in a company's time zone, but not necessarily when those recipients experienced them. So you'd need to match that against your own like actual audience composition. But yeah, I hope that answers your question a little bit more. Just we don't really have a lot of insight into like who each recipient is that's receiving an email sent through Workshop due to all the privacy things. So awesome. Devin, I've got a good one for you. How do you identify benchmarks and propose KPIs when your company has never had a true internal comm strategy or a measurement capability? This question asker is building one from the ground up and having trouble stating what success looks like.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And honestly, where I sort of started when I was at workshop, just about 2 years ago. And I really try to align it to first thinking about what are the company goals, right? Like, what are we doing? What are we trying to communicate out with the world? What is that external story? And then flipping that internally and saying, okay, now what do my employees, what do our employees need to know to keep them informed, to allow them to be able to do their jobs effectively and go out in the world and do amazing things on behalf of the company. So I would sort of start there and think about like what are those stories and how can you connect the two? And then I would say, okay, are there recurring meetings or events, whether it's an all hands or a town hall, that you can start to sort of tag comms to and think about, okay, well, if we have a quarterly town hall, I want to do a recap email. What are the goals of that? How do I want to summarize that or get people information leading up to and after? And so I would say sort of look at one, your company goals, two, what is most frequently happening, and then three, remember you're going to need at least 3 to 5 sends specific to like a campaign to really get an understanding of what's working. And I like to say like what's working, what's not, but sometimes you just strike the right balance and you can find things that are working right away and you don't have to pivot your strategy a ton.
Awesome. Thank you, Devin. Sophia asked in the Q&A, what is the best day and time to send out action items for staff? So we can assume from the data, we saw that average click rate and click-through rate by time of day, that peak was 3 to 5 p.m. in the afternoon. So again, we can kind of assume, maybe employees are cleaning out their inboxes. Maybe they, are finishing up all of their, last minute action items before they log off for the day. So we would recommend trying out, a late afternoon send, toss it into the mix, see how it does. But based on our data, we saw that the peak was actually 5 p.m. at a 17% click-through rate. So if you have, needing things for an RSVP or anything that's like one of those last minute stretches, maybe it's an employee engagement survey, just collecting those last minute responses, try a late afternoon send. Give it a go. Awesome. And then Courtney asked, curious if there are any big differences between this year and last year's benchmarks that you've noticed. I think for me personally, the biggest takeaway for difference between last year and this year is our shift in the way that we think about email open rate. So again, we shifted this year to the median versus the average that we measured last year. And again, I think it's just a better representation of the data that we're looking at. Inbox dynamics, AI filtering inboxes. There's a lot of things in the mix this year compared to last year that are just new. And I think the median is just a better representation. It's a better, truer middle of the pack number to compare yourself to and strive for. But that 73%, it can appear scary to some people. Devin and I talked about that. It's a big number and it's a great one. But again, it's super encouraging to see our workshop users achieving these super high open rates. It's awesome. It's a testament to the product. It's a testament to just the ease of sends and how employees, feel that and how employees can receive those emails and are obviously, doing their thing, opening them, clicking them, interacting. So
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, a question for you, Devin, from Jessica. Any tips on how to compare metrics when going from bi-weekly to a weekly newsletter? So shifting your mindset there, comparing stats on a bi-weekly cadence to weekly.
Yeah, of course, I'm gonna say try to do it for a couple of weeks. This is something that I also actually did when I first started our internal podcast. We did, well, me, I committed to a weekly release, and it was just very difficult to maintain as a solo internal communicator. And so what I did was I actually scaled it back to bi-weekly. And so my biggest concern was like, well, what am I going to do to fill that gap? Or like, how do I, if you're going from the opposite to going from biweekly to weekly, like, how do I make sure that people don't feel overwhelmed? I honestly had to take a step back and do the thing that did not seem most obvious, but I just had to tell people. Like I just had to say like, "Hey, we are shifting this and this is what you can expect moving forward." And then leave some feedback, some room for feedback open, but ultimately just let people know. And I think the reason that I say it's sometimes not the most obvious thing is because we'll strategize about like what we need to do and how do we manage the sends and like get everything like from a high level taken care of. But like on the other end of it is an employee who doesn't see everything that's happening on the other side of the fence. So the unlock for me was actually just getting up at all hands and saying like, hey guys, we're going to shift this from being weekly to bi-weekly, and here's what you can expect. If you want to listen to past episode, like give people like other ways to engage, but ultimately I just told people, and found that that worked really, really well for us.
Awesome. A question from Kelsey. What's the difference between workshop pages and a standard SharePoint page? And if they can be synonymous, how would you best utilize both of those channels? We are Apple / not Microsoft girlies here at Workshop. So we actually use Slack, Google Drive, and all of those things. But Devin, I would love to hear your perspective from an internal communicator's POV of how can you synonymously use SharePoint and Pages.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we don't use the Microsoft suite here, but we also have an intranet. And so, what I like to go back to is your channel matrix and making it very plain for what sort of information lives on a page, for example. For us, it's very event specific, it's time bound, it's something that you might maybe only need for a couple of weeks or a quarter versus like information that's like way more evergreen and needs to exist a little bit longer. So again, in that channel matrix, I said, this is what Pages is for, and this is what our intranet is for. We use Guru, just if anybody's wondering, and made that really, really clear. Again, not to only the people who are like the managers of that, but also the company. And that is something I would highly encourage you to do. I know like the average employee is not going to like nerd out over your comms matrix, but if you can just tell people what to expect and where to look for it, it's going to be a huge unlock in seeing people actually reach for it when they need it. And even encourage them to like bookmark this page or like add it to your favorites. It's going to be a huge help for you there.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you so much, everybody. It is 11, so we are at time. I appreciate everybody tuning in for my first webinar. Devin, thank you for hosting with me. We will send all of the resources following the webinar today. So thank you guys so much for joining. It was such a lovely time. It's such a pleasure to have you all. So connect with us on LinkedIn and keep asking questions. It's awesome to see all the interest in benchmarks. So thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you for joining. We'll see you next time. Oops.